Welcome to the Savvy Shopkeeper Retail Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Cruz. I'm a former brick and mortar store owner turned retail expert who is passionate about entrepreneurship and has experienced the highs and lows of running a retail business. Whether you're a seasoned retail veteran or an aspiring store owner, consider me your guide on this store owning journey. If you're looking to run a profitable and growing business that doesn't drain you, follow my 6 stages of shopkeeping and subscribe to this show. Join me for a journey of continuous learning where protecting your mind, maximizing profit, and determining your own schedule are a priority. Get ready to work smarter, profit more, and grow your retail business. Welcome to episode 231 of the Savvy Shopkeeper Retail Podcast. Manifested Success, a self-aware journey of building a dream store with Ceri Otero of Carthage olive oil. I'm your host, Kathy Cruz. So Ceri, obviously I'm here with another Shopkeeper Stories episode. Ceri joined Master Shopkeepers when she was in the middle of stage 1. That's the aspiring shopkeeper. You haven't quite opened yet. And she was almost at stage 2, right around the time that she was opening up her olive oil business. Ceri is a respected group member. I have to say that first, but also someone I would call a team member. She's our backup group call moderator, and we haven't utilized her services yet, but I know if and when we ask for support, she will be there for that role. Ceri has the sweetest disposition, and although she refers to herself as low energy, I like to think of it as a calming and smooth energy. She is wise beyond her years, and she has a cup is half full view on life and business because after our episode, she said, there are more ways to get it right than wrong. And for some reason, she said that, and it kind of releases so much pressure that we put on ourselves because we're so afraid of messing things up. The day before I recorded this intro to her episode, I received a card from her in the mail, and I hope she doesn't mind that I share this, but part of what she wrote really means a lot to me. She said, "Thank you for all the affirming things you said before, during, and after we recorded. You know how lonely shopkeeping can be. But thanks to MSK, I rarely feel that. Instead, I often feel I slow myself down, get in my own way, lament my areas of weakness, and that conversation with you did so much to build me up because you don't give empty compliments or simple cheerleading." She went on to say some more, and I think it's important to share this too. She said, "I admire how much internal work you have put in to know and understand yourself so you can be the best version of you. It's a gift to so many of us that you turn around." Now I have to stop the tears. She says that you turn around and fill others from that full cup. Of course, the numbers and the data matter, but all that mindset stuff has to be lined up first for some of us. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to have found the circle of people who also operate that way. Thank you for cultivating that in yourself and in the group and in me. I really genuinely hope you enjoy listening to Ceri's episode. She has a whole story to tell around her business, and it's so cool to listen to it. If you want to see the show notes to this episode or find links to anything I mentioned, you'll visit my blog at savvyshopkeeper.com/episode 231. Here's my interview with the lovely Ceri of Carthage olive oil in Missouri. Hi, Ceri. I'm so happy to have you today. Just like all other master shopkeepers that I interview, I always look forward to learning new things about you, talking about the group, talking about your journey, and just unpacking so many of the details that I might not know. So I first want to say welcome. Thanks for being willing to be interviewed for the podcast. I would love for you to share with everyone your background and how you started into shopkeeping.
Well, thank you for having me. I love the episodes where you interview the other shopkeepers. I feel like I learned so much from them, and it's always fun to hear the background, especially if it's, someone that I've gotten to meet in person too. It really kind of rounds out everybody's stories to know where we've come from. I don't know that I had dreamed of being a shopkeeper or of owning my own retail store. I don't think that had been a lifelong dream in any way for me. In many ways, I felt like it came out of the blue, except that when I look back, I see all the threads that have worked together. And And I feel now the way my mom felt when I told her what I was thinking of doing. She said, "Oh, of course. Of course you would. That makes perfect sense. You'll do great." And just was so like, she just wasn't a bit surprised. But in eighth grade, I sold Avon. I had to sign up under her name and social security number, which she was very kind to lend to me. So that so her name was the official one, but she didn't want anything to do with it. So I got to do it all. I wasn't terrible at it, but I learned that I didn't want transactional relationships with friends. I learned that looking at them as someone I needed to sell to was conflicting. And in my mind, it put a strange extra layer in our friendship, which was a really helpful thing to learn at 14 rather than to learn it at 35 or 40. It's good to know that I want my friends to buy from me if they want to buy from me, but I don't ever want to be in a position where I need my friends to buy from me. So that was a helpful lesson super early on that I had no idea would come back to be helpful at this point in my life. I was an HR manager for a couple of years. That was, that was helpful in so many ways now from the legal side, especially because I didn't get to choose how other people in the company treated employees. And in general, I found that they tended to treat their company vehicles better than their people. And that was a really helpful lifelong lesson that has impacted, hopefully, how I treat my employees. So there was that. I worked at a dentist office for 6 years right out of college. And I met so many people in this small town that I did not live in, but later moved to and now own a business in. And I cannot tell you how many people I still remember when they say their name. I think, oh yeah, I knew them way back in the day. And often I'll remind them of that. And it's a nice connection because they have a positive association with that office. So yeah, so I feel like I've done just a ton of different things. There were several years at Hallmark where I was a merchandiser, and then I was a supervisor of merchandisers who went into Walmart stores, and I live in the path between Walmart headquarters and Hallmark headquarters. So the stores I had were really under scrutiny. And so I don't know, that taught me a lot about turnover and how things come in. And I hated not having any power. Like I was at the bottom of the food chain there. And I thought, oh, but I hear from the customers. I know what makes them turn around without buying anything. Like I'm right on the ground and I don't get to make any decisions. So that's another thing, that has factored into this. I don't know. When I look back, I see 5 million threads that all have woven together that make me say, of course, this is what I would want to do.
Yeah, and of course, I didn't know some of those. But yes, it makes sense. I see because I've gotten to know you pretty well from the group, and you joined early on, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But I see parts and pieces of all of those careers or jobs or however you want to describe them in what you do now. Did you have any favorites?
I liked the Hallmark job more than I would have expected, partially because it was part time. There were seasons of just incredible work. There were some 18-hour days in there occasionally, but then there were days where I could take off several days in a row and I could travel to see my family and not have to be on at all. And so I loved that flexibility. And then when there were great Walmart managers who were really collaborative and who wanted the sales stats and who I could tell the story to of here's what this department in your store is doing, here's what it's netting you every year, or here's what this season brought to you last Valentine's Day or last Christmas. And they would look at those numbers and they would say, I didn't know that. Are you serious? And I can say, yeah, it's because you let us come in here and you give us some extra space and we can sell a lot more product when we do that, or whatever. When they would be collaborative with me, I really enjoyed building those relationships and helping them get some good sales.
So then tell me the story of how you came about with the idea for your store and what prompted you to begin that. What were you doing right before the store? Where were you employed?
So so it was COVID, and I had left Hallmark just, I don't know, 4 or 5 months before COVID hit. I had left Hallmark. I've always enjoyed writing. And so I had started doing some freelance writing. I was doing some business writing for a small business owner who just employs independent contractors. And I was writing her trainings for her contractors. And that was great. Like I enjoyed that. But I found out that I struggle. I didn't find out. I've known my whole life that I have a complicated relationship with deadlines. And it turns out that freelancing is that like I really admire the people who can set their goals and achieve them in kind of a vacuum, where you're not reporting to someone every day, you're not, no one's calling you, checking on you. It turns out I'm not stellar at that. So freelance life was much harder for my personality or my strengths and weaknesses than I thought it would be. So I was kind of floundering, but not really because it was COVID. So no one expected me to be anywhere or do anything. I'm an introvert. It was a great time to build the relationships that mattered the most to me. I really got to invest in some friendships that flourished, and I don't know, I felt like I was in a place of strength for the first time in a long time because there had been several professional failures that had kind of beaten me down, over time. So it was really nice to feel professionally like I was ready to do something again. But I thought I was going to write a book. I started outlining a romance novel because I read a lot of those during COVID times. So I started outlining a romance novel. And this is a little woo to say that maybe I accidentally manifested a store because I don't think there's any accidents. But I was writing a story about a, a shop on a square. Well, it was a
Yeah.
restaurant, a little bakery on a square with an apartment upstairs that was an Airbnb. I had this whole thing. And then a couple of months later, I went to, still during COVID, I went to dog sit for my sister many states away because I just wanted an escape and she needed to be somewhere for several weeks. So I went to dog sit. And while I was there, I used all her olive oil and vinegar that she left in the cabinets. And she left me a gift of olive oil and vinegar to take home. And she said, "You should probably stop into that shop. I think you'd really love it." So I did. I stopped in, and as I looked around, I could do the math. I thought, I know how much these supplies cost. I just know. And I hadn't done any research. I'd never heard of infused olive oil and flavored vinegar before. I'd genuinely never heard of it. And I genuinely walked in and I thought, I know how much this stuff costs. This lady should open a store where I live. Like it would do really good. States away, Kathy. Like she's not going to expand states away where she has no connection. But I thought she really should open that. So I reached out to her and I decided, well, someone should open it for sure. Like this really would do well. Someone should. And you know what happens when you think that someone should do something? You either turn into a really annoying complainer about what's not getting done, or you go, oh, yep, I could do that. That's me. I'm the someone.
So
So that's a
relatable.
it's a short version of like weird things that all came together to make the perfect storm.
I mean, a couple things. I think the story is so interesting because you hear so many other people who are like, I always wanted to have a shop, right? Like that was kind of my story. I always envisioned like my sister and I would talk about having a store. And your story is very different. I love the path that life led you on to get to your store. And it's very relatable to me because I think when I started Savvy Shopkeeper, it was the same. I thought somebody should be doing this. Why isn't anyone else doing this? And then I thought, okay, then it's just me. It's going to be me. I can do this. So I understand that feeling. Two things that I want to talk about before we move forward with your stories. First, if you can't already tell, two magical things about Ceri, her self-awareness. She's so self-aware. You really know what you like, what you don't like, what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And we're going to hear that throughout this entire conversation. And I think that's an important skill to have. I feel like I didn't have that until my late 40s. And the second thing is just your talent with words. I'm always in awe. The way you phrase things, the way you communicate with other Master Shopkeepers members, the way you answer them. I have goosebumps thinking about it for some reason. Like sometimes it's just two sentences, and I'm like, gosh, I wish I had her talent. Like that's normally what I think. It's just you have a way with words. So what I'd really like to know now is you saw this olive oil store. You thought we should have that in my community. And then what?
Yeah. When I look back, it happened really quickly. When I came to that decision, I guess, or that realization, it was May of 2021. And spoiler alert, I opened a store to the public on December 3rd of 2021. So when I look back, that was incredibly fast. But in the moment, none of it felt fast. I sat down. I spent a summer sitting in my rocking chair on the porch, listening to podcasts, which is how I found you. And I wish I knew what I had searched to find this, but I wanted to listen to people. I didn't want to just read stuff or watch videos even. I wanted to listen to it while just looking out at my street, which is literally Main Street in a quintessential small town. And I wanted to sit on Main Street on my front porch and look at what was happening and think about what was possible. And so I searched something that led me to your podcast. There were a couple others I found, but they were kind of a different tack, and that didn't help. And your tagline of at that time was work less, profit more. I think it's evolved a little bit since then, but work less piqued my interest because I am historically a lower energy person. I am not a go, go, go hustler. I have to sit and it looks like I'm not doing anything, but I am imagining lots of things. And it's only been recently that I feel good about that. It has always felt, like a liability, but it's not a liability. To imagine what's possible is helpful. So, yeah, so it's been huge to learn that about myself and to embrace it too. And my husband was really supportive during that time. Again, I was already not working. So, what's the difference if I'm sitting there imagining like a store? I think he thought, well, we'll see where that goes. Because I imagine a lot of things. Like I can't do all of the things that I imagine. I don't do anywhere near them. And most of them I never even tell him about. They're just little fleeting thoughts. If I sit and I really start thinking about something, it's because I'm pushing on it to see, like, can this stand up? Does it have any legs? Can this go anywhere? And so that's what I did for, I don't know, a month or more. So I listened to these podcasts. I learned about profit. I learned about, just how to research an idea. I got in with a small business development center that's nearby to have some appointments with them. So then I had a template for cash flow that I could then use in an application for a loan. So yeah, so while I was sitting there imagining, I would take a little bit of time to do something each week. And at the time, I thought, I am moving so slow. This is never going to come together. And at the same time, there was a building on the square that was for sale. I didn't want to own a building. So I talked to a friend who I thought seemed like a good candidate for a building owner. It seemed like that was right in her wheelhouse. She loves historic architecture and she loves our community. And, so I talked to her and suddenly she wanted to own a building. And yes, she wanted me to be the renter. And, like things just lined up. And then partway through the summer, the contract on that building fell apart. And the building I really loved, but that there had been a shop in that was next door to this building, she decided to go out of business. And I thought, oh, I think I could land in the spot that I really love. But I'd never thought of that one as a possibility. There was somebody in it. So all of these little things just kept lining up along the way. And what felt like it was moving really slowly was actually just, I don't know, maybe like bread rising. It was doing its thing so that the right thing could happen at the right time. And so as the summer progressed, I got my funding in place, got approved for a loan, just kept researching too. What will work in this area? At different times I thought I can still walk away. I can still walk away from this because I'm not sure I can make the numbers come out. I'm not sure that I can do this without being glued to the store, and I don't want to be glued. But then one day I had the realization I don't have to be open 6 days a week. I don't even have to be open 5 days a week. I thought if I were open Wednesday through Saturday, then I could do this. No matter what else happens, I could do that. So I set those hours. And then shortly after, a restaurant announced that it was opening up on the square and they were going to have those same days and hours. And it just, all of those things all came together. Did
Is
that answer
anyone
your question?
is anyone listening thinking, okay, this sounds way too magical?
It, well, I often think that too. But I think that there is an element of magic. That's why some people who work their tails off and do everything right don't always experience the success that we know they deserve. And they end up feeling like failures. And that's not fair. They're not failures. It was the right thing at the wrong time, or it was the right thing in the wrong place, or it was just the right thing that others weren't ready for, or maybe they didn't need. And so I don't know that I can say that I don't want to discount any of my work because I don't think there could have been magic without the work.
Yeah.
But those two things do have to line up. There has to be both magic and work. One
Yeah.
without the other is not gonna, it's not gonna bring success.
This episode is brought to you by my free resource, Tools of the Retail Trade Resource Guide, a 28-page downloadable resource filled with software, tools, and equipment recommendations just for brick and mortar retail store owners. Learn what I use and what other store owners are using. Visit savvyshopkeeper.com/resources. That's savvyshopkeeper.com/resources and sign up for my newsletter to get the guide. And I do believe in some of the magic. I do believe in manifestation, and I feel like the thoughtfulness that you put into all of the work that you do, and the pausing and the reflection, just the overall mindset, I think has helped you get to where you are now. Just a couple questions. When you talked about the loan, how did that feel? Was that a scary step? Because I'm sure some people are probably listening now and saying, well, I bootstrapped, or I was too afraid to take a loan, or I just applied for one, but I'm terrified. And I don't want to say everyone is afraid, because we have quite a few Master Shopkeepers members who feel like investing in themselves and getting a loan and debt is a tool to get their business to grow. Where did you fall in the grand scheme of things with that?
I don't have the stomach for bootstrapping. That is admirable to me, folks who can do that. But I definitely don't come from money. It's when my husband and I got married, it has always felt like it's just us. We have lots of love, lots and lots of love from our family. So that is vital. But it doesn't actually, like, you can't write that to the electric bill or, to pay the electric bill. So we need that support, but there's never been any financial support. Then there's also never been any strings attached. And lots of people who have some financial backing from others, it comes with voices. And there were never any voices telling me I couldn't do something. The voices just said, whatever you can figure out, whatever you can fund, whatever, go for it. So that's helpful. I didn't have some of that debt baggage maybe that some folks come with. I didn't have that, but I did have a husband who was not sold on this idea and is definitely really low risk tolerance. He's very cautious, very careful, and sometimes wonders maybe why I am so why I'm so willing to try something, like, because it might fail. Definitely things I've tried before have failed. So I had to win him over first. And so I just went and talked to the banker to find out what are my options. And when we talked about small business loans, and I found out, okay, I could have something that isn't like tied to my house. That was my husband's big thing. I do not want anything financial tied to our house. Like, that's our most basic thing. No matter how successful the business is, he won't sleep well at night if he knows that that's possible, that is tied together. So if he could maintain that stability, then he was all for whatever else I could do. So that sent me down the path of, okay, it has to be an SBA, a Small Business Administration backed loan, which still is through my local bank. And that's the way to do it, I think, because it's easier to build a relationship with your local bank. And I already had one before any of this. So that's the path that I went down. I did still have to put money in. And so that was where my husband decided that, he would come along a little bit on being a little more risk tolerant than he usually is, because I did have to pretty much grab all of our, like our emergency fund. We had worked hard to build up something that was a little bit bigger, and that's gone. And I have not been able, I'm almost 3 years in. I have not been able to replenish that yet. But I do say yet because I can see the path to it, but it's slow. And he looked at it as, we're just giving this away and I'll never see it again. And that way, he didn't lose any sleep over that. So he knows it will come back someday, but he doesn't sit around thinking about it, waiting for it, hoping for it. And that really matters too. So I think that's another part of the success, is having a spouse who is not involved, but is fully supportive.
Yeah,
And that makes a big difference.
There's so much maturity, I feel like, between the two of you and the decisions that you made around that. And thank you for sharing that story because there's so many times where people, and I just had this conversation with another Master Shopkeepers member an hour ago, where I said some store owners open, and yeah, some business owners take off running and can build a $500,000 million business in a year or two. But that isn't the case for most brick and mortar retail businesses. So the fact that you shared, I got this loan, provided some of our own personal finances for this journey, and we're 3 years in and still haven't started to chip away at it. It's reality, and I want people to hear the realness in our stories.
Can I say something else about the loan too? The banker encouraged me to build in enough working capital that if the first year was a complete dud, the rent would still be paid and advertising would still be paid. And that was a huge boost of, I don't know, confidence, if that's the right word. But he didn't want me to feel unstable right out of the gate, because then you're saddled with this debt that you do have to repay and a not successful business. He wanted me to have enough in the loan that the loan could do the heavy lifting for a while if needed, which that wasn't needed. I actually was able to build up a little bit of a reserve fund, which I guess I could have used that to pay myself back, but I want to use that for business stability. And then I have since reinvested that in some things. So yeah, having that working capital was really huge. And he said the number one mistake that he sees in new businesses is that they would be too conservative in what they thought they needed for working capital. So I was lucky in that the startup costs for the type of business I opened are not giant. And so it was easy to work that working capital in without making a wildly huge number that was scary, for a monthly payment. So to me, that cost of the interest every month, because it's a fixed amount, much like a mortgage, where your number just is this. I have this fixed amount for 7 years. And so the cost of interest, which is more at the beginning, and then less toward the end, in my mind, that is the cost for sleeping well at night and not having massively ballooning credit card debt or line of credit that is growing, and then I have to pay it down, and then it has to grow again. And so for me, that brought a lot of peace of mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you just touched on this about your business model, your business type. So can we talk about that a little bit? Because it's not as if you had a background in olive oil, and you do have a unique business model in the sense that you sell some products that I think you can source off of markets or online wholesale platforms, but predominantly what you're selling, you source on your own, right? I mean, the olive oil, the containers. So tell me about that. How did you even begin that journey?
So the store that I was in, that owner was incredibly helpful to me when I had reached out to her. She explained from her perspective what she saw in the olive oil industry. She named two suppliers, I mean, they're importers. They're doing the work of going to different countries that produced olive oil. And she explained that there were two that she felt like were bringing in the highest quality of product, where it's in bulk and we can then bottle it ourselves. I'm sure that there are others who are bringing it in, and either they're doing the bottling or it's already bottled at the country of origin. So I'm sure that there are other quality olive oils out there. I'm not doubting that at all. But of the ones where you can get it in bulk and brand it yourself and really make it, even though it's an international product, make it a hyper local product. She said there are really only two who do that really well. The others are all lower quality and they cut corners, and you'll save a little bit of money, but you're not bringing your customers the best thing. So I researched those two companies, decided on the one that I wanted to go with. I think I would have been successful whichever one I went with, because they really are both really good, high quality items. So, but yeah, I do have to find the other things on my own, like the bottles and the corks for the bottles and the labels on the bottles. But there are a lot of other little olive oil shops. And so those who use this same supplier that I use, we often just gravitate toward the same places and buy from the same sources. So I haven't had to figure absolutely everything out on my own. I definitely have tapped my resources of asking other shop owners. And if you talk to owners who are far enough away that you're not in each other's backyard, people are very open, or at least that's been my experience. I went and visited stores during that summer of research. I went and visited stores that were far away and had some of the best conversations and still talk to some of those people now. Occasionally we check in. And if we've found a killer new product that, has just been doing really well, we tell the others because it's helpful.
Oh, I love that. So, what percentage of your SKUs are constant versus new? Do you know where
Oh,
you're sourcing
I'd have
something
to
new
guess.
and it isn't part of the olive oil line?
Yeah, I'd have to guess. But I mean, probably 90 to 95% is my flagship olive oil and vinegar. That's where it's just easier to maintain our brand, I guess, because those items are branded. I went with a hyper local name and chose a logo that is based around our courthouse that, I'm on the square. This is what my building faces. It's a building that's photographed a lot. Tourists and locals all love it. Locals are proud of it. Locals love sending this gift to, as a gift to friends who have moved away or taking it to them when they visit. So that's been really, really helpful too, because then the product is something special and international, but it's in this local souvenir.
This episode is brought to you by the Savvy Shopkeeper Quiz. After years of research and learning from thousands of retailers, I determined there are 6 stages of shopkeeping. But what's more important is knowing the action steps store owners can take during each stage. These steps can help you focus, create efficiency, and improve profitability so you can grow. Take the quiz to find out which shopkeeper stage you're in. Plus, you'll get a helpful and customized list of podcast episodes and 2 free resources specifically for the stage you're in now. I reference the stages often in podcast episodes and when I teach online, so it's helpful to know which stage you're in. Visit savvyshopkeeper.com/quiz to take the quiz. So before we wrap up, I would love to talk about when you joined Master Shopkeepers, because I think that's important too. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like you joined, no, I'm pretty sure I'm right. You joined before, probably in that like May to December phase, right? Where you were doing the research.
I did. I joined in October of 2021. So I was still a couple months. By then, I had secured my loan. I had my lease in place. I was, the furniture had arrived. I was really in in that moment of this is getting close, but not knowing how far it might be. You never know in those final stages, how long is this going to take? Anything can hold you up. And there were supply chain interruptions still in late 2021. So yeah, I joined in October. That was, I think, a huge help because seeing what other people have done that was successful or seeing what they wish they had done differently, just on my own, I'm obviously a little brave, but there's something about being in with others who can give encouragement that makes you very brave. And so I think that was a huge push right there when I was getting so close to the finish line, which is also the starting line of, getting open. But that just that knowledge of, okay, I've made it through the research. Now I'm really here and the doors are open. I think having the support of a group made a big difference to actually getting that door unlocked and turning the sign to open.
Now that puts you at like the 3-year mark in Master Shopkeepers. Was it more helpful at the beginning, just as helpful now?
I still find it just as helpful. It's in different ways. Sometimes I'll listen to an older episode of something from the podcast, or I'll do a search in the Facebook group or in the lab, and I'll reread or rewatch something that I have encountered before, but it's like it's new because it hits differently and I can absorb different parts of it or implement different parts of it. So I find it personally to be just as helpful now as it was at the beginning, and probably more so, really.
And it's interesting because I feel like I just interviewed Jolene and she said something. She owns Joe Retro, and she said something very similar about being in the group makes you more brave. I think she said the same thing about
Mm.
herself and her own journey in there. I have a couple other things that I want to talk about because there's so many parts of your story, but I feel like we only have a few minutes left. Now, you I know you're working on expanding your storage space in the store. You actually tapped into another room or another unit in the building that you're located in. Was it your love of food? Because I feel a foodie sense from you. Was it your love of food that made the olive oil, selling olive oil make sense for you? Because you do workshops, you've brought in someone to teach on the subject, and then you're able to sell the olive oil and the other items that you sell. Tell me about how all that ties in together.
So my mom has pointed out that I have expensive taste. Like as a small child, I like the feel of the nicest sheets, or I like the smell of the nicest thing, or the look of the nicest lighting. We used to go to a specialty grocer where we could not afford to buy very much in there, but we would go to this specialty grocery store, Miller's Meats, and I would go stand and look in at their wine area that they had decorated with these beautiful lights. We were not wine drinkers. My parents were complete teetotalers when I was growing up. But I something about like the beauty of it just captured my my sensibilities, and I just was in awe of these twinkle lights and this ivy and whatever was beautiful about it. So that I think is really where it all comes from. Like I love these nice things, and I don't want it to pretend to be nice. I want it to actually be the finest quality that it can be. And so that meant then bringing in a cookbook author and olive oil sommelier, because I wanted to know, like, I want our knowledge to be quality, and I want our education to customers to be quality. We aren't just spouting a sales spiel. We're actually sharing true information that is as accurate and up to date as possible, that is meaningful, that can help their lives. It's wild to me how many people come back to us with health improvement stories, which we don't make any health claims at all. But if they take this stuff home and they're experiencing health improvements and they have objective lab results that measure that, like that's meaningful work that we're doing. So so then I branched out this year into doing a few classes and workshops. We're going to do more of that. We have a fall schedule that I'm working on right now where we'll do a lot more of that, because people value that kind of good education and the connection that comes with it. Because you can get education from lots of quality sources, but if you're sitting at home learning it, it's not that interesting. If they can get together in a room with friends or even with strangers, there's something powerful about that connection, that we retain more of the information, we enjoy more of what we're tasting or what we're making. We're meant to we're meant to be together somewhat. Even as an introvert, I am happy to say that we're meant to be together, but in settings that are that are not fluffy and shallow. So I care about the quality of it. So the quality of education means I have to expand into doing more than just selling a product. So I don't know what that's going to look like long term. I don't know how financially sustainable it is to have kind of an additional space that is just dedicated to classroom or to class activities or event activities, because that's not something you can do every day. It takes a lot of energy. And so I don't know financially or energy wise if this is sustainable. I really want to try it and see what it's like and how it goes. And then I am also carving out another 100+ square feet of selling space. I'm in a really tiny building. It's 14 feet wide, but it is really long. And we had a great back room where we did all of our bottling and all of that, and stored things. And there's enough room there to make more of it be the sales floor. So we're just shrinking our bottling and storage area. We're making that smaller in the back so that we can have more square footage up front. So it'll bump us up, I think, close to 650 square feet of sales space, which is still not much, but it feels cozy and intimate. It's a beautiful historic building with floors that, are old, and I wish they could tell stories because they've been through some things. But yeah, it's a really neat space, and so I would like to use it to its fullest potential and have more space to sell.
Okay, so much of what you said makes sense to me. High value. That's exactly what I think of when I see your brand and everything that you do, high value. So bringing in the experts expanding the space, even in like down to like the bottles that you choose, so much of it, there's a lot of thought that goes into it in terms of the brand and the value. I have your olive oil bottle on my kitchen counter right now. And so I see all of that in everything that you do. It also makes sense that you're expanding your selling space. For some reason, I think I said storage space, but it does make sense that it's selling space. Get the most you can out of that actual space when people come in. And I imagine your foot traffic is pretty good. But one other thing that I want to talk about is you knew it could get better. And we talk about this in Master Shopkeepers a lot, but let's just touch on it now as you had the courage to get a billboard, right? Is it one billboard or two billboards?
No, it's three.
It's
It's
three.
three billboards. So a couple of years ago, in the fall of 2022, I was on a trip headed to a Savvy Shopkeeper retreat in Michigan. I had talked to a billboard rep and I told him I don't have the money for this, but I know I will want to do billboards. I know I'll want to. And he said, well, I'll keep an eye out and I'll just let you know, as things come up. And so he emailed me while I was on that trip, telling me about two boards at that time that he had. And when he gave me the price on them, I thought, well, that's not at all what I expected. I thought it was going to be so much more than that. And we were in the midst of having what I now know is our worst month ever. I'd been open not quite a year yet then. I think that was like my ninth or 10th month in business. It was bad. Like it was really, really bad. And I knew that those numbers were bad. And I knew that I was on a trip investing in myself. I knew, I just knew like I'm on the cusp of this next little step. And people who pull back when they're scared and don't spend when they're scared of something, they don't go anywhere. Am I going to get back from my trip and wish that I had said yes, get those billboards? And I thought, yeah, I'm going to wish I had done it. So I said yes, not knowing right then, like, what if this bad month is what they always are? But it was September. I was pretty sure September's a bad month, right? I mean, that's just who's shopping then, Like it's going to get better as we head into Q4. Like I'm sure it's going to get better, but I didn't know for certain, you know? It's I didn't have any math that would say, yes, it always gets better. I just had a hunch. So I grabbed the billboards then, and literally within 24 hours of the first one going up, people came in spending a couple $100s at a time. And I thought, oh, this people who had no idea I was here, who would not have come off of the highway to come into town, are they're changing their trip, they're detouring to come here. And it has been that way ever since.
And that's incredible. And I wish we could unpack this more. You share a lot about your decision process and the design and so much more in Master Shopkeepers. But the one thing that I want to mention is I want to mention this because I feel like not only does that serve your business, but I imagine that serves the whole Main Street area because now they're taking the detour and coming into the Main Street and probably stopping into other small businesses there. I want to give you credit for having the courage to do that. So many small retailers would think, I can't possibly do that. But we have Master Shopkeepers members who have TV commercials, they have billboards, they do some of the big scary things. And it doesn't mean you have to do it long term. I think the way you approached it was, let me try it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I try something else. But I love that it made a big difference for your business. And hopefully you don't have any more of those bad months that you did in that
There haven't
September.
been any since. One other really bizarre component that plays into this and plays into part of that billboard decision, you're right about it bringing people into town. That was actually written into my business plan that I want to support what's happening. I get really tickled over submitting my sales tax. I'm in a state where my revenue requires me to do that quarterly rather than more frequently. So every quarter when I sit down to submit my sales tax, I get excited over being part of what's happening
Oh.
in our community. And at the time that I started the store, I was on city council, I was on a number of economic development committees. I think that I was more steeped in caring about what happens in our community than I realized because my personal success is Like that is important to me. But I really, really care about having a thriving destination. I really care about people wanting to come to this town and being excited about coming to this town. And when people come in from one of the areas, nearby and they say, oh, you should open one, in whatever town they're in, I say, but I really want you to come see this fabulous spot. Like, there's no view of that courthouse anywhere else. Like, this is a cool place. And I'm so glad you came to town. And I genuinely mean it. Like, I want to welcome them to town. And so I think that played into it more than I ever realized at the time that I got started.
And what is the name of the town? I don't think we've
Oh,
said
I
it
should
yet.
I should say that. Carthage, Missouri. We're on Route 66 in Southwest Missouri. We're really close to Joplin, Missouri, which is a much bigger community in the same county. But we were here first. We've got the big courthouse, and so people have to come over from other, from the more populous parts of the county, and then just in general, it's a rural area, and so people, have to go to town, to get their supplies and things. And so they do come into this little town, and it's a joy and an honor to be part of welcoming them to that. There are so many things I could do, but to have found this little thing to do, it's just perfect.
Yeah, I want to circle back to how much you do care, because that is always obvious to me, and your integrity is also really obvious to me. That's why I asked you to be an alternate group call moderator. Although we haven't really utilized your services yet, Kate Simpson, she's on it. She's on
She's
it.
available and ready.
And I'm so grateful for it. But knowing that I have you as a backup always makes me feel really good. So I appreciate that you're kind of part of the team. I have a feeling as we continue to grow that I might need you to actually do that for us once in a while. But for now, Kate and I handle it. I genuinely appreciate having you in the group. I know we could talk. I could interview you for 2 more hours because I still have so many questions. But it's time to wrap this up. So, how can everyone connect with you, follow you? Tell me all the things.
Yeah. Well, I will be honest that I am not as active on social media as I could be because I'm enjoying connecting with people in person. But I do try to get things out there. So on Facebook, that one seems to be where more of my shoppers prefer to be. So I'm more active on Facebook than on Instagram, but you can find me on both at Carthage Olive Oil Company. And then if you go to our website, we don't sell online right now. It's really hard to duplicate an online version of the personal experience. So that's what we're all in on right now. But there's a spot there for events so that as I publish more classes, those will be on there. There's a spot to sign up for the newsletter. And I do try to send helpful, valuable emails. And we have a really great email list that people seem to enjoy the information that we send out. So that's a great way to connect with us too.
Okay. And is there anything else that you wanted to share that we haven't covered or that I didn't ask you?
I think that one of the other valuable parts of Master Shopkeepers is that when I look at all the different ways to be successful, there are more ways to get it right than there are ways to mess up. And I just love being surrounded by that community. It's a huge boost of confidence to see that we can win when we're learning from each other. So I appreciate the community that you've built.
And I appreciate having you in it. I really, really do. I hope you feel that from me. Thank you for coming on here, for being interviewed, for sharing your story. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Kathy.